Welcome to the Millennial Mic.
I'm Ali.
I'm Joe.
And this is the Millennial Mic.
Content for us, by us.
Really?
Okay. All right. Welcome back, guys, to an exciting episode. We're doing things a bit differently today. We're actually going to be talking to, drumroll please, my fabulous co-host. But before we talk to her, let's hear a bit more about her. So, Ali Matalon is the managing director of Corp Care Social Impact Consultants Limited, a CSR firm doing the critical work of connecting businesses to their communities through meaningful and strategic engagement bolstered by the triple bottom line model. Her intentional implementation of the triple bottom line model in her business demonstrates that beyond focusing on profits, she cares deeply about a socially focused measure of success that analyzes environmental and community impact over time. Her altruism knows no geographical bounds, and she strives to leave a lasting impact on the world as a member of the Global Shapers Kingston Hub, where she serves as co-project lead for its male mentorship program, MEND. She is also an 876 volunteer ambassador. She holds a master's in public administration from Columbia University with expertise in urban and social policy. Her passion for human-centered design and policy was nurtured during her time at Northeastern University's Social Enterprise Institute and later as an advocacy support specialist with the United Nations High-Level Panel on Women's Economic Empowerment.
It's a mouthful, I know.
It's cool. You got it. She is CSR certified, it's very official here, and was named an Eisenhower Youth Leader for her work developing corp care and intends to use that work to sensitize the corporate world in Jamaica. When not saving the world, one injustice at a time, she can be spotted spending invaluable time with friends and family, plotting your next career move for you because you said you wanted it, playing with her dogs, dancing to the beat of her own drum while exercising, and being a fiercely loyal and supportive human being.
Oh, thanks, Joe.
An unapologetic feminist.
Oh, sorry, we weren't done.
You're welcome, friend. An unapologetic feminist, equal opportunity advocate, and lover of all things coffee. It is my distinct pleasure to reintroduce her to our audience, my brilliant co-host, Miss Ali Matalon. Woo!
Thank you, Joe Marie. Joe, is that even me that you just introduced?
Yes, it is.
Thank you so much. It's so great to be here in my usual seat.
Feels like I haven't seen you here before. So as you may or may not know, Ali, we usually start this off with some warm-up questions.
Didn't know that.
Are you ready?
I'm ready. SpongeBob.
All right. Lights have been lowered. The dramatic music is here. If you could only have plantain or patty for the rest of your life,
Why
which would you choose and why? This is a life or life or death rather question.
This is the most depressing question I think I've ever been asked. You know those like, if you could live without questions. I'm like, please don't ask me about plantain and patty. Please don't ask me about plantain and patty. So for our audience, Jo Marie did not give me these questions beforehand.
Oh, no. She's a guest through and through today.
And I didn't give her questions for part one of this 2-part series. Okay, patty or plantain I think I have to go with plantain because plantain is more versatile. So like I can have stamp plantain, I can have boiled plantain, I can have roast plantain, I can have fried plantain, I can have ripe plantain, I can have green plantain. I could even have crushed plantain. I could have plantain pie. I could have all type of things with plantain.
So it seems that plantain is the winner of this debate.
Well, I can't crush patty and make. Well, I guess
you could.
I guess
that would just be crumbs.
It would just be rough. It would be rough, and I guess patties are pie in itself. So no, you're bringing up other dimensions to this. Okay, no, we're gonna stick with because I could make a plantain patty, or can I not have any kind of patty?
this is you inventing the question. What the
I
question?
don't like rules. You know this.
Right? It's planting or patty.
All right,
That's
planting,
it.
Jomery. Planting.
Planting for sure. Okay.
Patty gods, I
Are
apologize.
you satisfied with your life choices right now?
Can I phone a friend?
Okay, so the next question I have for you is, what parts of your mother or father do you see coming out in your own personality, and how do you feel about it?
I think I fought more with my mom because I'm just like my mannerisms are more like hers, and I think you fight with the parent who you're most like more.
Yeah.
But I think I'm a pretty good mix of them. I have my dad's workaholism. My mother has workaholism as well, actually.
Okay.
As coming in from two sides. I think more than anything, I think about like the lessons that my parents instilled in me as opposed to the traits of theirs that I have. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, so in a lot of ways, like even the way that I walk is like my dad. But the way that I talk is like my mom.
Yeah.
So it just really, it really depends, I guess, on the moment you catch me in.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So then if it is that you're that perfect mix between your mom and
You
your
don't gotta
dad,
say it like that.
you know, what is something that, if you had to think of two moments, you know, for the entire lifespan of how long you've been here,
On this earth.
on this earth,
Traversing the planet.
what are two distinct experiences you've had with your parents that really come to mind in like individualist one experience with your mom?
These
and
are
experience with
warm-up
your dad?
questions?
Yeah, these are warm-up questions.
Wow. I thought you were gonna ask me something about coffee.
Oh no, we'll get like right after this. Yeah, man, these are warm-up questions.
All right, can you ask me the question again?
Okay, so the question
I feel like
is,
I
this feels very school
Miss.
challenge quiz is the question is, and it really is not meant to be anything too deep. Like if you think of fun and light moments with your parents, like think of the funniest moment you've had with your mom and the funniest moment you've had with your dad.
We're in Miami
Mm-hmm.
and we're on this walking path, and I think that he had just gotten an ice cream cone from McDonald's.
Yeah.
And he has this, I think it's this, there's this English comedy called like the Ministry of Funny Walks or something like that. And you know the Olympic speed walkers?
Yeah.
I'm telling you, he was an Olympic speed walker in his past life. He starts speed walking with the ice cream cone with his one hand on the hip, one hand with the ice cream cone down this path. And we're all like, he's not with us. It was so funny. I think also it's like you have to know my dad, like he just comes off as a really serious person. And then he just breaks out into this speed walk in the middle of the pathway. So that was really funny. My mom is hilarious because she just curses like a sailor for absolutely no reason at all. Like you would think the world is on fire 95% of the day because she bucks her toe on something and it's like beep, 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 beep. Or something good happens and she's like beep, you know. So I think those are things that stand out about them. But I just love how much they like are human with their kids.
Yeah.
And they like allow themselves to be funny and jovial and vibesy with
Yeah.
their kids. Yeah. And so that's given my brother and I a lot of space to just like be ourselves.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. They're great. Like Frosted Flakes.
It's interesting that you say Frosted Flakes because the last warm-up question is, what is your stance on the great debate of cereal first or milk first? The real first is the bowl, actually, but I digress.
Is definitely important. But
Cereal
do you put
first
the spoon
or
in
milk
first or spoon in last?
I mean, the spoon have to go like where you go put in the spoon, and
Sometimes the spoon just end up in the bowl,
but then you need
and then I pour the cereal over it.
okay, all right.
You know what I'm saying?
So,
And then it's like a measure. The spoon is like a measurement.
that's a whole other variable. I don't even know how to process that right now.
Okay,
So cereal first or milk first?
I'm hard and fast. Cereal first. The only time I will ever do milk first,
Okay.
is if there's a shortage of milk
Right.
and I only have a very small amount of milk and I don't want to have not enough milk to
Yeah.
cereal, then I'll just add the cereal. The only time.
Oh, okay. But
That's
as
like
long
if
as
I'm
the milk
like,
is flowing.
last quarter cup of milk in the carton, there's no more in the cupboard. This is where we're going. Like, gotta risk it for the biscuit. But cereal first for sure.
Okay.
And I like dry cereal as well. So
Yeah.
I don't need. I also don't drink cow's milk. Just because I not because I don't like it,
Mm-hmm.
but one, because I'm not a baby calf,
Mm.
and two, it's not a baby calf, it's just a calf, right? Baby cow is a calf. Okay. And two, because it don't
Things
agree
just
with
got
me.
real specific here.
All
Like-
the vegans in the audience are like, yes, we're not calves, you know. But yeah. So,
Okay.
cereal first, dry cereal if
first.
necessary.
All right.
We out here.
So, thank you for indulging me in these warm-up questions, Miss Matalon.
Happy to be here. Happy to be here.
So as we get to know you a little better, you know, if someone
Like
was,
you don't know me at all, Joe.
of course
Like you
not.
don't know
I've never met. If someone was writing the untold story of Ali Matalon, what would you want it to say?
The untold story of Ali.
So this is the aspect of the story that's not public facing. So I would have read your bio earlier, and these are the things that people know about you. But in your quiet time, in your private space, for the persons who know you the best, what aspects of that story would you want people to know?
Sure. Awkward silence. What would I want people to know that people don't already know about me? I think probably the things that people don't already know about me are things that maybe I've kept private intentionally or unintentionally.
Right.
So I don't know if I would necessarily want them told, but I guess some things that people don't know about me. I'm a carpool karaoke type of girl. I can't sing to save my life, as you all heard on the Protege episode. So I guess that's not all that untold anymore. I really love books, but I don't really read any fiction. Like I mostly just read nonfiction.
Yeah.
I think that speaks to how much of a nerd I am.
Yeah.
Like I really want to know real stories.
Yeah. What's your favorite book? I know that must be hard to
That's
say,
really
but
hard.
Not to sound hyperbolic, but like if you're okay,
I have a couple.
yeah, all right. No, so let's add to that. We're gonna take the deserted island approach.
Oh,
so if
boy.
you were somewhere all alone
And I
and
could
you could
only
only
take one
carry 3 books, I'm giving you 3.
Oh,
3
I
books.
love this. Okay.
What would you bring?
Khalil Gibran,
Mm-hmm.
The Prophet.
Mm-hmm.
That has to go because that's like Bible vibes.
Mm-hmm.
My bestie Doms actually introduced me to that book, and he framed it in that way. He was like, this has been like my Bible. And it's totally become my Bible as well.
Yeah.
It just has so many beautiful passages on like family, friendship, love, like all of the parts that make us human. So that one for sure. I want to say I would take a Brene Brown book, like any Brene Brown book.
Yeah, I
because
feel like that
if I'm
has to be there.
on a deserted island, I feel like I'm going to need to be vulnerable. And Brene is like, it's okay, you know? So I feel like that would be reassuring.
Yeah.
And then I guess I'm not going to be like, you know, writing policy papers on this deserted island.
Nah.
So maybe I'll take like a more enjoyable book that reminds me to be wholly myself and move through the days even on my own time, you know, as freely as I want to, which would be Untamed by Glennon Doyle, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
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 So taking you off the deserted island.
Okay, we
and
got
bringing
more
you
books.
back to and bringing
Live
you
revives.
back and bringing you back to your childhood actually. At what age did you find your voice? Because something that is so very distinct about you as a person is you're very unafraid when it comes to speaking up for not just injustices but just in general.
Yeah.
Like speaking up for things. So at what age did you find your voice, and once you found it, what have you chosen to speak about?
God bless my parents because they really let me speak.
Yeah.
Oftentimes to their embarrassment. Um, I think my mother will say that I came out the womb with my voice. But I think my grandmother, Mimi, I call her, actually played a huge role in giving me permission to use my voice, even when it seemed that I would say uncommon things.
Right.
Or I would be disturbing the status quo of a conversation.
Right.
She is a woman who has really lived her life, of course, privileged to do so, but, to the beat of her own drum. And having an example like that, I think, allows you to feel free to do that as well. But the way that she did that was out of such a deep-rooted respect and empathy for people.
Yeah.
And I think, if you engage empathy at all in life, it makes voicing people's concerns, even if they're not your own, feel so much more of a necessity or even more intense. So I think it's why when I see injustice, and I do my best as much as I cannot experience what that person may experience who is being treated in an unjust way.
But there's an empathy there.
But you can engage empathy, and I think that empowers me to speak.
Right.
So I think as long as I was able to understand the concept of empathy or compassion, I had a voice. And I think I really pushed the boundaries. I don't know what's innate versus what's nurtured in this case.
Right.
But I really did push the boundaries of what like a child could say. For example, like we'd get in the car after dinner and I'd be like, Mommy and Daddy, I think those people are going to get a divorce. And they'd be like, don't say that at the next dinner party. You know what I mean? And I was like, but you can see they're not happy. And my mother would be like, oh God, let's leave her at home. No, but more seriously, I remember just a couple of years ago having a conversation with my dad and his friend about like the issue of consent, and really making the dinner table uncomfortable by saying, well, how many women have you slept with that you asked for consent? And my father is of course sitting there cringing, but he's like, I cannot tell her not to have this conversation because this is a super important conversation. Because basically the conversation was around this idea that there's more incidences of sexual assault or abuse of any kind today than there ever were. And my point was that no, it's just that more of them are being spoken about.
Yeah, they're coming more so into the public domain, so you're knowing more. But
exactly.
Like that.
And society is having a reckoning with untold stories.
Right.
And so what I was explaining to him was that I think that his belief is rooted in his own bias and patriarchal conditioning.
Right.
That's a really uncomfortable, casual conversation to
got
have.
Real quiet. After.
Yeah. So I think like, school has really helped me to allow my voice to be more sophisticated or increase my vocabulary so I can talk about things in ways that are maybe a little bit less harsh or blunt.
Right.
While still maintaining like
your authentic voice and being direct.
And having the permission to do that in my family and I think, in friendships like ours even, you certainly encourage me to have my voice. I encourage you to have yours. And those are the kind of friendships and relationships that we have to seek out, especially if we want to live in a more just and free world.
Yeah, where we can be able to have
really long
those.
answer.
No.
I'm sorry.
Look here. I mean, it's your show.
It's our show.
So yeah. No, in the context
I wish
that,
the audience could have seen your facial expression a while ago. Like you just looked at me like, it's your show, baby.
We're setting the rules today.
We are
here. Just to kind of go back to something that you said earlier on, and a word that I think is something that you're so cognizant of and so aware of, that you encourage others to interrogate their own, and that word is privilege.
Yes.
And it's something that you speak about it very often, like in any conversation, you're very open about it. And I just want to know, like, why is interrogating privilege so important to you? And, has your last name played any role in that awareness or assessment? Like, have you ever been in a position where you almost felt like you had to justify or explain that to someone?
Oh, yes. Joe, you want to give our international audience some context to the last name question?
The thing is, I think you would be in a better position to do that because the nature of asking this question is also framing the experience for the audience.
Yeah.
So even beyond the international audience, I would want persons who, whatever preconceived notions they have, this is now your opportunity to clarify that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm in court. Let's testify. So, okay. So I think anyone with a social conscience or anyone who allows themselves to feel empathy for the world around them may feel some level of guilt for the privilege that they have.
Right.
That is natural. My belief is, instead of harboring that guilt, to utilize my privilege,
right,
to make space for greater access to the privilege I have and equity in opportunities, because I come from this belief that we're all born of equal potential, right? And I've told you this before, like I won the birth lottery.
Right.
It was a concept introduced to me in college, and it was the first time I felt like my life was explained.
Right.
I was like, oh yeah, I didn't do anything.
Yeah.
I just was born white in a wealthy family, in a safe neighborhood, in a violent country. In so many spaces I was born into.
Right.
With so much access, with endless opportunities. Certainly I've had to work for things. I don't think my graduate degree was just given to me, or the jobs that I've had were given to me. I certainly worked for those, but I've always been able to move from a foundation of privilege and access.
Right.
And knowing that if I fail, I'm going to be okay.
Right.
That there's less on the line, right? So I may feel more free to start a business, for example, than another person.
Right.
Because I'll be okay.
Right.
And to be cognizant of that is being empathetic towards others.
Right.
And also, I think it's just so critical in understanding your place in the world and understanding the role that you play.
Right.
And that, it's almost like check yourself, like.
Yeah.
Because I don't even know how to explain it, but it's just like.
Yeah. Because
you're not that great. Like, I mean, of course, yes, you are. Yeah. We're all great. Okay.
I think what it is as well, having had the benefit of being friends with you, is that it's an identity assessment that you navigate the world with, because you know that, and it's not something that it's put on, or it's not something that you feel like, because there's a thin line between interrogating your privilege and a superiority complex that comes off. You're not in that latter category. It's more like, I am very much aware of the access that I have, and quite frankly, because I have this access, I see the growing need to empathize, the growing need to just be out there, because quite frankly, and I've said this to you before, you could have chosen any other business model. Your business model is very much indicative of the fact that you want to serve others, because corporate social responsibility is not the sexiest business model in the world, but it's necessary.
Yeah.
And it reflects positively to the fact that you are passionate about people, and you're passionate about helping others. And even in your vocation, even in the midst of endless possibilities, as you put it, you've still put people first, So I think that.
Yeah, I think too, so much of it comes down to space, right?
Yeah.
Is that when I take up space, am I doing that exclusively to the benefit of myself?
Right.
Or am I doing that to the benefit of others who are also in the room who can access this space?
Right.
Right? So, for example, when I take up space in my identity as a woman, I feel really good about that. I think that's important. Women need to be in spaces of leadership. Women need to be in the rooms where things happen, where decisions get made. We need to rebalance the scales of gender identity. And when I take up space in a place where my white identity may not feel as safe to others, then I am taking up too much space. Right? And knowing how to manage that or navigate through those spaces, even if I facilitate space for others, through my privilege.
Right.
I need to know when to take it up or
Right.
not to.
Right.
And I think that that's what makes interrogating my privilege
But
such
I think
a practice for
But
me.
to your credit, I think you navigate that pretty well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But I think it's a practice, you know. I think
Yeah.
it's like yoga or exercise or
Yeah.
reading.
You have to.
You always have to work on it.
Yeah, but what I want to, like, make very known to the audience is that this is an active
Yeah.
interrogation.
Yeah.
This is not someone who comfortably is like, all right, I did it today, I do have to do it tomorrow. It's very much an awareness that you have, and I think that's really commendable, because
Thanks,
it's
girl.
a choice that you could have easily said, I don't have to do this. And actually you mentioned it before, where it's like your household encouraged this conversation.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't
Yeah.
it was something that would have been at your foundation, and then you have made a conscious decision in your adulthood to continue to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, you know, that I certainly think is nurture.
Mm-hmm.
So many families like mine do not encourage that.
Right.
Or have this belief that there is no luck involved in life.
Right.
When there's actually a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, so much of that is based on legacies of colonialism and slavery and tribalism and racism and sexism. And if you can't, you know, see that, I don't think you see the world fully.
Yeah.
And I do want to say, you know, like, in terms of this being a practice, you and I have spoken about this before, Joe, like, probably what I say today, I wouldn't say in 5 years' time, because my views may have progressed.
Right.
And the world's views may have progressed.
Right.
You know, one of the most liberal people I know, he's a much older man. He's in his 80s. And, you know, he was quite homophobic as a young person.
Yeah.
And today he's not.
Yeah.
And so much of that is, you know, being an active participant in the interrogation of global privilege,
Right.
in, you know, heterosexual privilege, in all different types of privilege, and knowing that it is okay to change your belief if your belief is unjust,
Right.
or if your belief infringes upon the rights of another person.
Yeah.
And I think that that's, you know, another thing that we have to be so cognizant of is, like, I tell people all the time, I'm super happy to have conversations that where we disagree. I think those are some of the most productive conversations that we can have. I'm also in a very privileged position to have those kinds of conversations, because a lot of what we're talking about doesn't necessarily directly affect me.
Right.
But if your beliefs start to infringe upon or they bolster the systems that adversely affect people,
Right.
or, you know, decrease access to their human rights
Yeah.
and, frankly, humanity, then we have to part company.
Yeah. You draw
Because
your line in the sand at that moment.
Because then we're not having a conversation around, you know, a disagreement.
Yeah.
We're having a conversation around hatred.
Yeah.
And that's not really a conversation.
Yeah.
So yes, I do want to say that probably, you know, in a week's time, I'll look back at this episode and say, oh, Ali, you should have said this, or Ali, you should have said that, you know, because I think that that's the whole part of the process is progressing.
Yeah. And I think that, you know, really on that note of progressing and understanding that it's a practice, is also appreciating that there's an openness required.
Yes.
Like, you can't really...
Willingness to be wrong.
Yeah. That willingness to be wrong, that openness to
uncomfortable.
even say, you know, as you always say, getting comfortable being uncomfortable is important.
I know you wanted me to answer the question about my name.
Well, that's totally up to you.
Okay. So for, I guess, our audience who doesn't know, my last name, I guess, is pretty known in Jamaica. It's probably mostly associated with business, probably associated with wealth, probably associated with whiteness. And I don't think any of those things are inherently negative. I think they just are what they are.
Right.
But Joe, you had asked me a very specific question about
So
that.
let's
That
so
I
let's,
want to
let's
really
frame,
answer.
yeah, let's
Yeah.
frame it a bit, right?
Yeah.
So the question I was asking, so you would have touched on why it is that interrogating
Yeah.
privilege on a whole matters to you.
Yeah.
The arc of the question also was if your last name had anything to do with why it is important to you.
Yeah.
So it's not just a matter of just your last name in abstraction, because and actually as you raise it in that context, this might be the time to discredit anything that is, or any misconceptions that might be out there, because we'll be hearing it directly from you. So
Yeah.
it's what you're comfortable with
Yeah.
answering
Joe,
in
the
this
comms
context.
expert.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So the question, just to repeat, is
Yes.
if your last name had any impact on why you felt the need to interrogate privilege,
Yes.
in your own spaces, in other spaces.
100%. Absolutely.
Okay.
100%. Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, for
So
it's open doors
yeah.
just by its presence at the end of my name.
Right. But if you're but then I guess how we can also look at this, right, is if you take Matalon off of your name,
Yes.
and you want people to know, like, as Ali, beyond my last name, beyond everything,
Yeah.
what would you want people to know? Like, what misconceptions would you want to clear up? Because I do think that it's a type of conversation that I think people need to understand, because
Yeah.
something that you've told me, in the past, is that a lot of people are surprised about who you are when they meet you.
Yeah.
They might have some preconceived
Yeah.
notion because of your last name, but when they take the last name off and just meet Ali, it's
Yeah.
like, okay, this don't make no sense. So
Yeah.
in that context,
Yeah.
what would you want to discredit or clear up in terms of a misconception?
Well, I think a name is just a name,
Yeah.
right? And it's, there's a whole family behind
Yeah.
that name, and all of those people are different.
Right.
And so I'm gonna just be Ali.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be who I am.
Yeah.
And certainly my last name and the experiences that have come with that, living in a country where that name is known, have affected, the way I move through the world. I think that's supernatural. But I think because of who my family is, that has made me even more conscious to when someone is treated differently from me because they do not have that name.
Right. Okay.
So, for example, like when I go to a security post of a complex and I say my name in full, it's rare that the security guard calls the person who I'm going to.
Right.
Whereas if I just say my first name, they may be more inclined to do so.
Right.
Or, maybe it's a combination of factors. Maybe it's my name. Maybe it's my skin color. Maybe it's the type of places that I've gone to. Whatever it may be, right? Is that, I think it's easy to have an awareness of what it does if you just open your eyes to it.
Right.
Or your ears to it. Or your mind to it.
Right.
And of course, like, as I mentioned to you before, my family certainly encouraged that.
Right.
And, that played a really important role. I think some, preconceived notions about me have been that maybe I won't be a super inclusive person.
Which is wrong. I know, as you're talking, I'll
Joey's
just say,
I'm gonna debunk.
Wrong.
Maybe I'm not maybe I don't have to work hard for things in my life.
Wrong.
I haven't chosen the path of, working with my family's business, for example. Probably in a lot of ways to debunk that. I love the businesses that my family participates in and works on, and I'm sure I will be involved in one day in some way, and I already am. But as my primary, career path, I think those businesses provide me with the foundation to explore things like policy, to explore things like corporate social responsibility, to encourage people to be more mindful of what they do with their business.
Right.
I think maybe some other preconceived notions would be that I'm uptight.
You're very wrong.
Or, that I'm snobbish. I don't
Very
know.
wrong.
I'm trying to think too, because I also just don't have friends who think that way.
Yeah. But I think you touched on it in terms of, you would clearly have demonstrated that, look, it's And I think it's very important for our audience to understand that, one, don't judge a book by its cover. That's like the first thing, really. The second thing is also Ali's approach to life in the face and in the midst of privilege and in the midst of being aware of it is also being very much is utilizing it as a force for good to advance and to ensure that other persons who may or may not have access to the kind of things that she might have access to, or by virtue of, you know, her positioning, is that that's not the case. You're not sitting down and saying, well, I am good so everybody else can have a good time. It's more like you are actively seeking ways to improve the world around you. And so you are creating space even in the midst of what other people might think that, oh, but you don't have to do this. Mm-hmm. And then you touching on, you know, just the fact that you're aware. And I think that's really the note that I want to leave it on, that your awareness has helped you to navigate the world in a way that is even more empathetic and even more, you're seeking in every single way to try and advance and to help and to empower others, because you appreciate that, hey, not everybody is sitting at this table, but I want everybody to sit at this table. I want everybody, and if you don't have
down the table,
right, and if you don't have the table, bring in the folding chair. Yeah. So yeah, man, and thank you for sharing that, because it's a question that I think a lot of people have in the back of their minds, but this avenue or this conversation is really meant only to clear that up and to also allow people to get to know you.
Thanks,
and
Joe.
not have not have that.
I so appreciate, you know, the way that you think about me and see me. Mm-hmm. So thank you too.
You're welcome.
Yeah. We're so awkward with compliments on this show. But we're getting better.
It's the fierce love, guys.
Yeah, it's the fierce loyalty we talked about before, the love.
So you made an intentional decision to come back to Jamaica, and to pursue your professional life.
I did.
What has that journey been like, you know, and what have been some of the highlights of it?
Sure. Oh my gosh, so many. So it's interesting because I think I did need to live away for a while to prove to myself as an anonymous person, you know, in the States, for example, that, you know, I could do it on my own. Right. I mean, obviously not on my own, but you know what I mean? Like, I need to prove to myself that, you know, I'd really perform well in these jobs that I took and stuff like that.
So would you say that on the what do you call it now? On the back end of it, that's an interesting notion, that on the back end of it.
Yeah, on the back end of what we just spoke about. Yeah.
On the back end of what we just spoke about, there is like, I'm aware of it, but I'm also aware of it to the point where I'm like, personally, I feel the need to ensure that, hey, I never just got it because of that, but I got it for the merits.
I think it's also a thing of growing up too. You know, it's like, all right, let's do this. You know, like, and you know, I was, you know, really fortunate to be able to go away to university in Boston, and then right after university, I got a job at the UN, and I think that, you know, I had a lot of jobs in college as well. Right. And that was also an intentional decision for me. You know, so many of my classmates took jobs to make ends meet in school, to pay off student loans and to pay for their education. Right. And, you know, I again was in a fortunate position to take jobs for the experience and to learn what it's like to be, you know, accountable to a boss and to perform really well in a system, but also to be entrepreneurial within systems, or entrepreneurial as people call it. Right. And develop your voice and yourself, as we talked about before. But so straight out of college, as you mentioned too in the intro, I got a job with the UN, which was a really interesting experience and taught me a lot of, it gave me a lot of like personal fortitude, I guess. Because the UN is quite a political space, and I really had to fight for my contract every time it was renewed, because there's so many people who can do your job and do it well. Yeah. And so you do have to position yourself as the person to
As
do
the best
job.
option. Yeah.
And I was one of the few people that they had on contract who didn't have a graduate degree. I think I was the only person certainly in my office or in my unit that didn't, and that was pretty unusual. So, you know, it simultaneously felt good to feel so not even needed, but like as though the work I was doing was so meaningful as to keep me on as somebody significantly less experienced or who didn't have the, you know, the degree or the degrees that other members of the team may have had.
Right.
So there was that, and then I pursued my master's shortly after the 2016 US election. So I would have been working at the UN when the 2016 US election happened. And I just still remember thinking maybe it's time for me to go home for obvious reasons. And I still had maybe about 6 months left of my job contract. And so I fulfilled that. And I was offered to stay on, and I decided that I would pursue my graduate degree because that was really the one thing I wanted to do before leaving the US.
Right.
Is that I did want to engage in like a really multicultural international graduate program before returning to Jamaica. But in every instance in my life away, the work I focused on related back to Jamaica.
Right.
And I think that all of that culminated in the decision to come home, or was a reflection of my underlying desire to come home.
Okay.
So, you know, when I worked at the Social Enterprise Institute in Boston at Northeastern University, where I did undergraduate, you know, I directed so many of the impact investments to Jamaican organizations, monitored and evaluated those. Those created the foundation for me to do the kind of work I do, like with Corp Care, for example.
Right.
Same thing with the UN. We were able to get Prime Minister Holness to come to some of our events.
Right.
And these were like really high level events where like I think the Prime Minister said that he was a feminist at one of them. And so all of those things were really important to me because at the core I felt like even by an extension or, you know, even not as close hitting as if I were living in Jamaica, these things were positively impacting where I came from. So the decision was really intentional to move home. I graduated on May 19th and I believe I moved home on May 24th. Yeah, it was May 24th. And it's one of the best decisions I think I've ever made. It did not feel hard.
Yeah.
Again, you know, fortunate that was the case. I was able to come home and live with my parents for a few months and really understand my place in a country that I hadn't lived in as an adult. Right? I left Jamaica when I was 18. I came back at, almost 26. No, 25. And I hadn't lived here as an adult. I didn't know where do people go on a Friday night. I didn't know, like, I'm like, okay, will I meet new people, or am I going to just only have friends from high school? Like, because Jamaica is like a big city, small town vibe.
Yeah,
right?
True.
So, it was really, really intentional. And it was challenging at first, but meeting people like you, the friends that you and I have, created, the friendships that we've created, the networks that we've been able to develop, that's all made it worth it.
Yeah.
That was, again, a very long answer.
It's our show. That's the answer for that.
Everything today. It's our show.
It's our show. Yeah. Okay. So, if AOC...
Oh, boy.
Brene
Are these a cool noun questions?
No, these are not the
cool
noun question. I feel like I started at the fever pitch and just get hotter every day.
Okay.
So if AOC, Brene Brown, Kamala Harris, Tracy Matalon, and
Hey,
you
mama.
were having a table talk, what would be the topic of conversation?
Oh my gosh, there would be no topic. I'd be like, let's free rein this. Let's see where this goes.
Yeah.
Feel like my mother would talk about motherhood. She'd talk about all kind of things. My mother can connect with anybody. Anybody. So she's going to have AOC, Kamala. Who else is there?
Brene Brown.
Brene Brown. She's going to be talking to Brene about cooking because Brene likes to cook.
Yeah.
No topic. Just vibes.
Yeah. Yeah. What? Okay. So then
Don't really
let's
love
add
get
to
her
that.
questions answered,
Yeah,
you know?
man.
She
Yeah,
love it when the
man.
question
We shall
answer.
reframe forever.
Oh,
A
okay.
joke. The reason I would have chosen these women is that they represent something very important for you
Yeah.
in their own ways.
Yes.
And so just for our audience who not know, like, what do each of these women represent? So I'll start with AOC.
Power, representation, and courage.
Brene Brown.
Vulnerability.
Kamala Harris.
Power again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Force.
Yeah. And Tracy Mattalon.
Empathy. Goodness. Love. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Ali, I just want to thank you so much for being so transparent in our
I thought you were going
conversation.
to thank me for being here. I was like, it's our show.
No, but I just want to thank you for being so transparent and just open to the questions. As she would have mentioned earlier, guys, she had no clue what questions I was going to ask. But she could trust me and know that I would ask the right kind of question.
Because we love it here.
So before we go, though, we do have some cool down questions for you.
Okay.
Yes, man, we're not wrapping
Plot
up.
twist. Plot twist.
So we would have touched on mentorship at length in the pre-warm-up episode, but just to kind of ask you, weeks have passed, almost months have passed. What's your favorite resource?
Audible.
No. And what are you reading now on Audible?
I am listening to Barack Obama's new book on Audible right now. It's called A Promised Land.
Yeah.
Really long. It's like 29 hours on Audible. Yeah.
Wow.
So I'm pretty fresh into it, but I just finished I have this thing where I'll listen to 3 books at a time, or I'll listen to 2 books, read 1 book. It's my most unhealthy habit. And I just finished both of Abby Wambach's books, Forward and Wolfpack, I think they're called. And those are amazing for anyone interested in leadership books. Those are great. I've been binging Brene Brown's podcast. She has Unlocking Us, but now she has a new one called Dare to Lead.
Yeah.
She did an episode with Guy Raz on how I built this the other day. So amazing. Okay, but back to the books. Yeah, Obama is what I'm listening to now. And it's just so nice to hear his voice again, after 4 years of it's just so nice to hear his voice for so many hours. I'm like, I feel so reassured about the world.
To be back with you today.
Yeah. Jo Marie is good at impersonations, guys.
No, guys, it's a hot mess.
She is. Jo Marie and I do a lot of different voices.
Yeah. No, you have to put that in context, because people think so. You put it in context. So we do a lot of voices for fun.
For fun. Yeah. No. Oh God. Yeah. For fun.
So where can our audience find you, Ali?
Oh my gosh. You can find me at the Millennial Mike on Instagram and at the Mill Mike on Twitter. But in terms of my personal pages, you can find me at AliMats, ALIMATS 876, both Instagram and Twitter. I would love if you checked out the Corp Care pages, which is Corp Care, CORPCARE on Instagram, and Corp Care JA on Twitter. We also have a website, www.corpcareja.com, and we will actually be releasing a giving guide for Christmas or for the holidays, whatever you celebrate. It's been a really tough year for people.
Yeah.
And we want to provide people with access to resources through our community.
Yeah. Well, since it's our show,
it's our podcast.
Like, comment, subscribe to the Millennial Mike on all podcast platforms. We're so invested in understanding more about you, our audience, who you want to hear from, what you want to learn about, and what you want to see coming from the Millennial Mike. So, Ali, I'm going to need your help with this. Are you familiar with this part of the show?
I'm Ali.
I'm Joe, and this has been the Millennial Mike.
Thank
See
you
next
guys.
Hello, Millennial Massive. I interrupt this closing message to remind you about our holiday giveaways called MILLMAS, where we'll be raffling off mentorship sessions with each of our guests, myself and Ali included. And so follow us on Instagram at The Millennial Mic and on Twitter at The Mill Mic to find out more details. And thank you so much for listening to this amazing episode with my co-host, Ali Matalon.